there's plenty to think about before you buy a home computer.
Electronic games being heralded by folks in the trade as this year's holiday bestseller.
Children have skipped school or stolen money to play the games.
I'll be looking at the electronic game craze.
And at the end of the tape, I'll be back to tell you how to safeguard your computer.
That is, of course, our backing track music. Backingtrack.gg if you want to get heavy metal, hard rock, etc. royalty-free music for your streams or videos. You can download it in our Discord at discord.gg/EposVox. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is EposVox, and I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is streamer news? Alright, guys. Hello, guys and gals. It's been a little while since we've had a streamer news. I'm really stoked to be back. I enjoy this show a lot. We had a little bit of a hiatus as I've had some family stuff going on the background, and we had a Discord stage discovery event kind of thing last week where we normally had the streamer news slot. If you missed that, it was pretty sick. We talked about making this background music backing track and how we put that together and all of that jazz, and it was pretty good. Join us on Discord so you don't miss future ones of those. Today we have quite the number of topics between Windows 11, a potential Thunderbolt 4 webcam with some doubts on that. We're talking about Starlink, TikTok, Mega Man games. We've got some cool stuff going on, right to repair. But as we get into the housekeeping here, and I want to have a minute to check in with you guys, talk. But as we get into the housekeeping, I wanted to talk about our merch. If you head on over to eposvox.gg/merch, I have a merch store for the first time in my entire career. We have 3 things that you can pick up for yourself right now: a desk mat, a VHS sticker, and a VHS style pin. And these, I think, are reasonably priced for what they are. And if we switch on over here, this is the pin. I have it upside down in the packaging for some reason, but I will pull one off of my pin board here. This is an enamel style pin. I block out my face. In the style of the kind of Polaroid blank VHS cover design. We're going to be doing a run. These are kind of limited run launches for now. We're going to be doing a couple different runs here with the different blank VHS cover designs, and I think it's going to be pretty sick. So for the first one, of course, this is the style we have. Here are the stickers. I think they're absolutely sick. They can go on your laptop, on your PC tower case, on your shelves, on a notebook, what have you. They're a little bit bigger than an SD card for size comparison. So if about twice the size overall of an SD card, just for reference. So those are the fun things. The functional thing is the desk mat, and I have one right here. Just realized I never started recording. I only have one of the final version for myself right now, so trying to keep it safe. Bam, we've got the blank VHS design. We've got Vox instead of VHS in the corner. Got the E180. Pretty freaking sick. This is, of course, fairly high quality, pretty nice. This is on the smaller side for these days. This would have been considered a pretty big desk mat just a couple years ago. These days, desk mats get huge, but I wanted to start out with a size that was actually kind of reasonable. Also, I wanted to clarify, because the renders don't show it, the edges are sewn up. And that is important, because desk mats that don't have the sewn border will fray or come apart over time. And while it makes it a little bit thinner, they do not last very long at all, especially if you ever have to wash them. And so I wanted to clarify that, especially since the one that I was kind of teasing in the background of video shots, when I had the when I had a prototype, it did not have the sewn border. And so I just wanted to make that clear because that was a concern some people had. It's not the thickest desk mat in the world, but it's thick enough, like I'm pretty happy with it. I only have one for myself at the moment, so I'm keeping it for product shots and talking about it. But I do want to get a couple more for me to actually put on my desk, because whenever you see my desk, you see my own merch, which would be pretty cool. So again, that's eposvox.gg/merch, and when you pick up one of these for yourself, they do ship internationally. The shipping has been fairly quick from what I've seen. The people who are in my sub squad on Discord, who are Twitch subs, Patreon subs, whatever, they got theirs like a couple days after I announced it publicly to everyone anyway, which was like less than a week later, so pretty sick. If you purchase one of these for yourself, you do get a 30-day free trial to Nebula, my own streaming service that I've built with my creator friends. That gets you early access to videos, extended cuts of videos, no ads, higher quality, stuff like that. We'll talk about it in the ad spot, of course. But you do get a 30-day free trial with your merch purchase as well, which is pretty neat. Oof, what did I miss? YT just told me you were live. I've been live for 2 whole minutes, so you missed me talking about my merch and showing it off, which you can see here, or just rewind the stream. But yeah, for the first time in my career, I have merch, which is pretty neat. All right, give me just 1 second. It's actually something that I'm so not used to promoting that I almost forgot to mention it in today's stream. I literally added it to my stream doc like the second I went live here. So that's something pretty cool. In other housekeeping related subjects here, we had a couple pretty cool videos go live since the last stream, since I haven't done a streamer news in a couple weeks. So the last one we had, I was talking about the hot tubs. We had Computex, the virtual Computex, and so I covered AMD and Nvidia's Computex presentations. AMD has their DLSS competitor of sorts that is going to work even on Nvidia cards. I just wanted to make a note here. I don't normally address these things in actual content, but because obviously I went with a slightly more clickbaity title, and I don't consider it actual clickbait because clickbait is something misleading that isn't actually represented in the video. The claim AMD just killed DLSS is literally the entire argument I'm making for most of the video that I back up throughout the video. Inherently, that can't be clickbait. You can disagree with my claim, but that doesn't make it clickbait because that's still what the video is about. But that's not the point. What I find interesting is, like, people aren't mad about it necessarily being clickbaity. People are mad that they think that I am an AMD shill or that AMD is paying people to say this, which I find really freaking hilarious because if you've watched me for any length of time, you know that I basically do not recommend anyone purchase an AMD graphics card ever. Especially given that my my audience is content creators and streamers, and AMD cards are the worst option of the two for that audience, to the extent that AMD doesn't even send me GPUs for review because they know that I'm not going to talk great about them because they refuse to implement creator or streamer friendly features. The reason that I am so excited for FSR is because it runs on Nvidia GPUs, because it runs on both sides. So that people who use a GPU that's actually worthwhile for content creation and streaming, which is not AMD, can use it. It's just, like, it doesn't even bother me so much as it's hilarious to be called a shill for a company whose product, in this context, I basically tell people to never buy. Obviously, the people leaving those comments just found the video through recommendations or whatever and have no clue who the hell I am, but it's just hilarious. But I covered Nvidia's as well. They had less to talk about, so I made it a YouTube short. By the way, I forgot to mention last show, I did actually discover that you can do shorts in the 1:1 aspect ratio. So any aspect ratio that is a square 1:1 all the way up to 9:16. So any ratio that is taller than it is wide can be used as a YouTube short. So you are not limited just to 9:16 vertical videos. And so I do find the square, the 1:1 aspect ratio, to be a much better compromise for desktop viewers, as well as mobile viewers and iPad viewers and things like that, versus the full vertical format, which is pretty miserable to watch on desktop. So I think that's pretty important to keep in mind. And I think that's pretty neat. If you missed it, we have been having my AFK chat show, which runs Tuesdays at 3 p.m., streamed here on YouTube as well as Amazon. And we've had, for as polished and everything that I try to keep this show, Streamer News, to be, to the extent that we have people asking every show whether it's pre-recorded or not, AFK chat is kind of the opposite in that it's pretty much always a disaster. Something always goes wrong, and we just kind of wing it. And it's really amusing how, like, opposite that is. But we also had a review of the Epiphan Pearl Nano, which is a cool little all-in-one streaming box that would be used in corporate or education environment. I covered Athenascope finally again. We got a huge update for the Elgato Stream Deck, which adds some really neat stuff. I made a video about using AI upscaling to upscale old VHS captures, which was a lot of fun to dive into, and I might cover more in the future. And then just yesterday, I finally posted my review of the Genki Shadowcast, which was a capture card that raised $4.3 million across Kickstarter and Indiegogo to basically make a $6 Cantlink clone and make an app for it and rebadge it. And even when I reached out for my original request to get a review sample last year, they expressed concern that they didn't want to be dumped on like Atomos for just rebadging a shell, and they couldn't believe that Atomos thought they could get away with just rebadging a shell. Now, I did note in my review, and I want to point out that Genki has done what I said in the Atomos review needed to be done, which was you got to do more than slap your label on the case. You got to actually change it. So they changed quite a bit about it. They have made their own revision, and they developed an app for it. So to me, to a degree, if you're going to reuse an existing product, that is kind of the steps required. But to make a product based upon being a low latency play your consoles on your computer product, choosing one that has terrible latency and is just generally crappy looking just doesn't seem like the way to go to me. A couple people have recommended me try out the Konami code in their app to supposedly get true 1080p 60 FPS. The issue being the chipset that they use and the capture cards that it's based off of are incapable of doing true 1080p 60 FPS. So my guess is that they might just be upscaling 720p. Otherwise, I'm not entirely sure what's going on, but there's no software tweak they can make to make 1080p 60 suddenly work. And in fact, I was literally reviewing last night another one of these $6 capture card knockoffs. This one has USB Type-C, and it is the same thing as the Genki Shadowcast. And once again, it can't actually do 1080p 60. So, yeah. It's got that going for it. So that about wraps up the housekeeping, everything that we've had going on. Again, be sure to join us on Discord. Go check out our merch and check out the music if you like at backingtrack.gg. Let me get a drink here and we will jump in to today's topics. Love the content, man. Stay positive. You too. And yes, we will talk about the product in the thumbnail. I have never once in my entire 14-year career on this platform put something in the thumbnail that isn't in the video. Just to be clear. All right, first up in topics, we have an article from Digital Trends, and in fact, there have been videos from the Art of Photography and things like that talking about this, and I haven't had a chance to really test because I don't have an Intel Mac that isn't from 2013. But Adobe has rolled out native versions of Illustrator, Lightroom, and InDesign for the M1 Max. And in fact, Lightroom and Illustrator are supposedly 80% faster on the M1 Max versus the Intel Max, which is pretty interesting. Obviously, that doesn't necessarily make it that much faster than an x86 computer. Generally speaking, just the Intel Max specifically, which may have had some performance bottleneck or something. But it's pretty interesting to see. They had a few optimizations get involved, and they introduced super resolution for upscaling photos as well into Adobe Lightroom, which is pretty neat. So we're looking at Illustrator saw a 65% performance increase, InDesign a 59%, and Lightroom Classic a 116% performance increase over Intel Max, which is pretty wild, pretty neat to see what they can do there. I will say, having spent some time trying to use Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve on my M1 Mac Mini that I have right over here. So, you may have seen your sub feed be filled with videos talking about people who are ditching their Mac Pros or their expensive computers for an M1 iMac or Mac Mini or whatever. Obviously, I knew that that wasn't realistic, despite the fact that that's what all these videos are saying. I knew that wasn't realistic whatsoever. But also, I wanted to put that to the test because that's what everyone keeps saying. And I will say that my experience has been pretty disappointing. Now, obviously, my point of comparison isn't fair. I am coming from a giant desktop tower with a 3970X Threadripper, a Titan RTX, 128 gigs of RAM, very optimized SSD workflows for cache and scratch disks and all of that. But keep in mind that as expensive as my computer build may be, it is literally a fraction of the cost of a Mac Pro. And yet, people are claiming they're ditching their Mac Pro for the iMac M1 or what have you. So I wanted to see how it performed. And DaVinci Resolve is one of the first editing programs that got optimized for M1. And so I wanted to try it out since that's what I use. And the experience has not been great. It's been sluggish. It's been slow. I have to enable like quarter res timeline proxies to play back my footage. Doing certain GPU accelerated effects is incredibly slow compared to my Titan RTX with 24 gigs of VRAM. Who would have thought? I feel like it's RAM limited, VRAM limited, GPU, you know, I can immediately see the different effects because I'm so used to editing in Resolve where I can identify what the specific bottlenecks are. And I'm just confused. Either the people whose videos I've seen about this have much more simplified timelines than I expected, or the editing workflow in something like Final Cut, which is what I think they're using, which is obviously going to be more optimized, is that significantly different. And I don't use Final Cut. I never have. I probably never will. So I can't really use that as a point of comparison, especially since it doesn't run on Windows in the first place. Yes, the music is playing. Do I need to turn it up a bit? There we go. But I don't know. And also it comes down to specific codecs. Like obviously the M1s have specific optimizations for decoding and encoding H.264 and H.265, but not necessarily Blackmagic RAW, which is what most of my stuff is using. And even the Canon RAW and the Canon XAVC or whatever is still having to go through Rosetta as well to be decoded. So there's a lot that gets involved in translating stuff over to M1 that may not work out here, but I was just generally disappointed, and that's unfortunate. Now, I didn't buy the M1 to replace my giant computer tower, but with everyone talking about ditching their big, expensive computers for the M1, I wanted to find out. I was fairly open to it, so yeah. Y'all don't hear the music? Yeah, I hear something now. All right, well, it's going now. It's hard to get audio balance levels because me hearing it in my headphones does not necessarily make it where you all can hear it. I will turn my headphones down so it's more realistic. All right, next topic. After that rant is over, AMD has launched a RX 6900 XT graphics card that has an all-in-one liquid cooler, a 120mm all-in-one liquid cooler, which generally wouldn't be anything special. Like, this is fairly normal. And for people who kept asking if that would be enough cooling, 120mm is generally enough to cool any CPU whatsoever, or GPU rather, whatsoever. It is really surprising how like easy it is to cool a graphics card with a 120mm AIO. But they are effectively strapping a 120mm liquid cooler to the 6900 XT. The difference here being that you are paying $825 extra for this cooler. Not $825 for the card itself total. $825 for just the cooler add-on. Now, obviously, the discussion about this, like everyone's like, oh, you can liquid cool a whole computer for this price or whatever. Obviously, this is involved effectively to make it so that people can actually buy these cards in the first place, because you can't cool your graphics card for only $200 or $300 if you can't have the graphics card in the first place. So obviously that's a part of it, but that's so ridiculous, especially when you consider, I'm gonna go off script here a little bit. I have actually used this on my Titan RTX. NZXT has a Kraken G12 AIO block for your graphics card, where you just take off the cooler, mount this to it, strap an AIO to it. I even used the generic AIO and cooled my Titan RTX with this for a long time. For $30, and then like $100 for a 120mm AIO. So at most $200, not $825. Obviously, again, the value expectation there is actually getting the card in the first place, because if you can't buy it, how much it costs doesn't matter, which has been kind of Linus's argument in the first place with all of these new GPUs. But I would be incredibly curious if there's a single like actual gamer or whatever that pays for this, because Jesus Christ, the market is messed up at the moment. People expect rads to be huge because of all the bling builds with 360 rads lining every corner. Yeah, I mean, the issue is, if you're cooling multiple components like in line, you need more radiators or more radiator space. And generally speaking, it seems to be that CPUs require more cooling in the first place. Like, despite the fact that it runs really hot with the stock cooler, I run my Titan RTX that was able to cool with a 120mm AIO. No problem. My Threadripper, on the other hand, couldn't really cool itself on a 120mm AIO at all. Same thing, especially with the Intel X299. Like, you're not really cooling that very well with an AIO or even just a custom loop with 120mm. And so my custom loop has I want to say a 240 and a 360. And even then my CPU still gets a little hot because the GPU is dumping all of that heat upstream to the CPU. It doesn't get like throttling hot or anything, but because it's eating all of the heat from the graphics card. But that's when you need all that space. When you're just cooling a single component, you don't really need a whole lot of radiator area space. Give me just a sec again. Sorry about that. Fabulous says, will AV1 remain as a streaming codec, or do you think it will be implemented in video making for recording? I think we will see it for archives and things like that at some point. In fact, DaVinci Resolve in a recent update has added decode support for AV1. If you have Nvidia, Intel, or whatever decoding on the graphics cards. I don't foresee it being used for like regular stuff just because it's harder to decode in general. But I think for archives or for low bitrate needs, it could be useful. Like HEVC right now, like it's used for recording for certain scenarios, like HDR, or where you need to just like squeeze the most quality out of a small space. But in terms of blanket just recording, it's fine. Like you don't need HEVC. So I think it would be a long time before we see it in everything, just because it's harder to do. Like H.264 is used for literally everything from Blu-rays to web media files to files you download, because it's supported on everything, because we have like 2 decades of hardware that has decoding built in for it. AV1 is going to get more traction in terms of iGPU and GPU decode support, but it's not necessarily going to get that wide of a level of decode support in terms of saturation for another decade or so. H.265 has more money behind it, but it also costs money to use, so you're not going to see H.265 used for like H.265 was considered dead on the water. It's currently used for certain scenarios for HDR and things like that because it's the only option, but you wouldn't, like, you don't use it for anything else because the licensing and things like that ends up making it dead, like I said, dead on arrival. So I think eventually we might see AV1 replace or supplant H.264 for like a general purpose codec, but I think that's gonna be like, we're gonna be at a point where we're like, where's the next codec or whatever. It's not gonna be by 2025 or something like that. I could be wrong, but the way that usually rolls out, I just don't see it being the case. I think it's gonna be mostly optimized for streaming, you know, low bitrate Netflixes and Hulus and YouTube and Twitch and all of that, more so than I mean, you could use it to record. Once everything kind of normalizes and we have encoders and decode support, like you could use it to record just like I can use the StreamFX plugin to record H.265 right now, and I do. But there won't necessarily be a big reason to, and it could cause you potentially more trouble by doing it that way. Hope that makes sense. Next topic, and I'm only going to talk about this for a minute because screw Facebook, but Facebook announced last Wednesday, or actually probably this past Wednesday, that they will begin testing advertisements that appear in the Oculus virtual reality headsets as well as a VR game. It's a shooter game, I believe. I forgot the name already. I don't seem to have it written down. I thought it was mentioned in here. Yeah, Blastin'. So we've had games going back to like the year 2002, like Battlefield 2142 had ads for Intel processors on the billboards and things like that, which was incredibly stupid because you're playing a game that's supposed to take place in 2142 and you're seeing ads for a processor from 2006 or 2003 or whatever. But this is not necessarily something new. I just think it's disappointing and one of those like weird, you know, surreal, just like, is this really where things are going kind of things, because it's going to be obnoxious and invasive, and hopefully we can get ad blockers for our VR headset, which just sounds so stupid, but yeah, I don't know. This is unsurprising because Facebook is killing off most of their platforms, including Instagram, due to heavy monetization and advertising, but yeah, it's a thing. So it's really tough. So in terms of VR, I have the original Oculus Rift. It is currently in a box. I have used it a total of probably 5 times. I've made a couple videos about it. I did some streams with it with some sponsored incel stuff back in like 2018. I used it for my personal play. I ended up having a severely negative reaction to the spatial audio whispering stuff in Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, despite the fact that it's a wonderful game, and I kind of put it down and never picked it back up. And I have been wanting to get back into VR, and it seems like some of the Oculus stuff is some of the top tier stuff. But do I want to deal with all of this Facebook crap? Like, I don't know. I don't. And so I'm really kind of torn on what I'm really kind of torn on what headset and stuff like that I should be looking into, to the extent that I have basically dropped VR altogether. I wanted to respond to something in chat. Felipe is saying no one wanted to pay for H.264 either. H.264 did not have anywhere near the licensing costs and requirements that H.265 has. If you haven't looked it up, look into the H.265 patent wars, because it got patented and licensed to hell to the extent that it is basically inviably expensive. Like, no one can afford to or wants to justify throwing in H.265 support because they have to pay for every single user and blah, 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 in a way that wasn't the case with H.264, which is why it's been dead on arrival from the first place, because no one wants to deal with it. Like, there was some licensing for it, but not the same as H.265, and there were still open options for H.264, whereas there aren't the same for H.265. So it's just a whole mess. Also, someone's asking, please explain why screw Facebook. Just consider Googling Facebook and looking at any of the news ever associated with the company. Yeah, but yeah, biometric data for ads based on my breathing or my movement in my home. I don't know. It doesn't feel right, and it's just, like, I'm someone who doesn't complain about ads a ton. Like, I have little sympathy for people who want to complain about YouTubers running sponsorships, but run ad block on YouTube and all of that. I typically, advocate for paying for the ad blocker, whatever services like YouTube Premium versus actually using dedicated ad blockers. But there's a certain extent where I have pay, especially when you pay so much. Like, Oculus is not a cheap product. Like, none of the headsets are cheap. So when you're paying such a significant amount to get into an ecosystem and paying for the game itself and all of that, you want to sit down and not be bombarded with the outside world. On top of the fact that some of the appeal of VR is the immersion and the separation from the real world, and all of that immersion is kind of ruined. As much as I hate that phrase, the immersion is kind of ruined by having the ads in there. I don't know. It's not right. And yes, Felipe, the licensing for MPEG 2 is also nothing compared to H.265 either. All right, so one more chat. Someone in chat brought up a new Logitech webcam teaser. I had not heard of this, so I'm going to pull this up before we get to the next topic. I am seeing nothing outside of the stream cam, so I have no clue what you're talking about. Also, yes, the barrier, the threshold of time to switch to H.265 would have been like 5 years ago. No one switched to it. It's not even time will tell. Time has told. Everyone avoided H.265. Everyone's waiting on AV1 now. To chat, would you be okay if Apple played a 30-second ad every time you turn on your phone? I wouldn't, but even just whenever you turned on your phone still is not as invasive as having it in the actual headset. That would be like every time you opened an app, a new ad played, and then you switched app and whatever. I'm not seeing any new webcam teases. So whoever said that in chat, feel free to link it or give me something to look for, because all I'm seeing is the stream cam from last year, which wasn't great. The Brio does everything except save your settings competently, have proper white balance controls, have an uncompressed mode for 4K 30, have an uncompressed mode for 1080p 60, give you proper shutter speed controls. You know, anything someone actually wants a camera to do, you know. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Someone said Brio is okay, but Logitech is always trying to improve. I highly doubt YouTube is, or Logitech is, I highly doubt Logitech is always trying to improve. Anyway, so Starlink, people have finally been getting their hands on the new Starlink satellite internet and all of that. And we've already seen situations where the satellites themselves are overheating at only 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, 122 Fahrenheit sounds warm, but it's not, especially for something that's literally supposed to sit in the sunlight in air, and especially for something that's I don't know. I just wanted to share it because it's so dumb. Like, I've never heard of a satellite, like, you know, back in when I was a kid, satellite TV was the rage. We had DirecTV or whatever all the time. Your satellite TV never died because of overheating. It may have died due to storms or something, but not because the dish overheated. And especially for something that's designed by a company that's probably in the California area, that's literally supposed to sit in the sunlight all day. Like, that's just hilariously embarrassing to me. But, yeah. It's a webcam, not a camera. Sure, but they... Okay, so Logitech... This is my issue, is Logitech keeps making cameras that they market and advertise to streamers and content creators, and then refuse to compromise on a single basic requirement or bare minimum to support what content creators need. So sure, it's a webcam, not a camera, but when you get to something like the Brio or the StreamCam, it's not a basic video conferencing webcam or a basic video calling webcam. It is a camera designed for streamers that needs to have basic saving manual settings and, you know, white balance controls so your face looks properly and things like that. Like, these are settings they could implement that they're just not doing so. And actually, there are webcams coming out soon that will implement that. I just can't talk about them right now. But yes, 50C for heat is not hot at all. Like, my CPU right now is at 60C, and it's nowhere near overheating. That's just like standard. All right, so TikTok is rolling out pinned comments for your posts on TikTok, which is actually pretty cool. So YouTube brought out a few years ago pinned comments, and they have been super useful for getting time codes and, you know, relevant links for people who don't read descriptions on mobile and things like that. I think it was I always thought it was kind of ridiculous on YouTube because it basically replaced the video description because they made the description so hard to get to on mobile, when they could have just kept the description easy to access. But on TikTok, I think it's really important because there isn't really a useful description in the first place, but also it lets you do something that, you know, like asking for thoughts or responses or asking an additional question to get engagement going. But I think it can also be useful for promoting outside links, because TikTok has always been fairly open and cooperative with supporting creators' other platforms. Like, not super like so, but you know, they've allowed you to link your YouTube or your Instagram directly in your profile. They kind of encourage creators to build audiences outside of TikTok and bring them back in. And I think this is one of the features that kind of encourages that as well. So I think that's pretty cool. I just wanted to mention it. I know not everyone cares about TikTok, but hey. One more topic before we hit the break, and then we will cover the webcams after the break. We have a new re-release of Mega Man The Wily Wars, and this is a collector's edition from Retrobit, I believe, as usual. Yep, available. I have an affiliate link to Castlemania Games in the description that will be there in the VOD. It looks like we're not getting links sent for a lot of these topics. I do apologize, but we do have this up on Castlemania. Let me turn off my dark reader here. There we go. So this is one of the Mega Man games that was really hard to get a physical copy of, at least here in the States. And so they're doing one of those repro releases of it so that it is easier to get, as well as include some nice collector's edition goodies. So you got like little trading cards and art books, stickers, what have you. Some pretty neat stuff. I know not everyone agrees with the repro scene, but for games that you can't get a hold of, that you just want to show some appreciation for and stuff, some of these have been pretty cool. I've had some of these Retrobit releases, and as a collector who likes the little like feelies, as they're often called, or the little goodies that comes with them, I'm a fan of them. And so you get a double-sided cartridge sleeve. They did actually improve the game ROM itself with apparently some gameplay performance issues. It's a blue cart for the Genesis. It's got a full color instruction manual, certificate of authenticity if you care about that. Trading cards, sticker book, double-sided poster, and additional collector's cards chosen by Retrobit fans. So there's a Castlemania link in the description below. It is pretty neat. We're going to run our ad spot real quick as I clear out my throat and what have you, and jump and shoot, man. Yeah! And I will see you all in just a moment. I think. Where's my button?
Back to PlayStation!
After we talk about my own video service, where you can get an extended cut of this video and many of my other videos. The site is called Nebula. My videos are higher quality there, ad-free, and often extended from the YouTube versions. We've partnered with CuriosityStream as well. Nebula features YouTube's top education creators such as MKBHD, Thomas Frank, Low Spec Gamer. CuriosityStream saw what we were doing for educational content and wanted to partner up. We've worked out a deal where if you sign up with the link in the video description, you not only get access to CuriosityStream and their library of thousands of educational and documentary titles, but you get access to Nebula as well for free for the entire duration of your subscription to CuriosityStream. Even better, CuriosityStream is currently offering 41% off of their annual plan, now through Father's Day, making it less than $12 per year for both CuriosityStream and Nebula. While you're there, check out Cosmic Encounters. It's a documentary about space, filmed in space. Head to curiositystream.com/epos for a streaming deal out of this world for both sites for under $12 per year.
Do you need stream-safe music for your streams and videos, but want something a little heavier? My awesome community sought to solve that and made Backing Track. Hard rock and heavy metal music, safe for your content and free to use. No subscriptions. Head over to backingtrack.gg to stream it or join our Discord for free downloads.
Sega is rolling out a new video game console this week.
It's one world. Why view it through two windows? Panasonic introduces the 36-inch SVGA TV.
And of course, if you missed it at the start of the stream, go check out our merch, eposvox.gg/merch. We've got a desk mat. It's pretty sick. I showed it off at the beginning of the stream. You can rewind to check it out. We've got stickers, we've got pins, and we've got more coming. I did want to mention, I forgot to mention with the Mega Man topic, follow me on Twitter. They are giving me a box of this to give away. I will be hosting a giveaway this weekend, so go check that out as well. Twitter.com/EposVox. I will be giving away a copy of the Mega Man Wily Wars Collector's Edition. So stay tuned for that. I don't have the exact details yet, but I will be tweeting it out. So maybe enable notifications or something. Otherwise, backingtrack.gg for the background music and eposvox.gg for the merch. All right. Jumping into the rest of the topics today, Apogee has a new Duet audio interface. This is the Duet 3. It is $600, which is quite expensive, but Apogee makes some of the highest quality kind of interface, not the highest, but some of the highest quality audio interfaces you can get for making music and recordings and things like that. This one's meant to be completely portable. I think just takes USB power as a separate power source. It has a hardware DSP. It is USB Type-C powered. It is pretty sick. It will be available next month. I doubt I will get an opportunity to try this out or anything because this is a little bit above my operating kind of level, especially since I don't do anything for music. I don't really have anything to offer for that, but they do make some good stuff, and this is a new release coming from them. EON, the company that makes the Super 64 for the Nintendo 64 or the GameCube HD adapter, they make some of those. They will be raising prices soon due to chip shortages and things like that. They won't be able to maintain their current prices to make any sort of profit between shipping and the chip shortages, so they will be raising prices. So if you find them in stock at the current prices, I would recommend picking them up if you've been waiting, because they're only going to get more expensive for the time being, which is unfortunate. Reuseful asks, are the backing track stems out? I'm not entirely sure yet. I will ask Ice real quick here. If not, join us on Discord, discord.gg/EposVox. That will be where you will be able to download them anyway, and Ice will post in the backing track channel in there once they are available regardless. Next up, a congressman from New York has filed a right to repair legislation for Congress. Now, this is something they did back in 2018 when they were still working at the state level as well, and it was kind of dead before it even got voted on. However, a lot has changed. A lot of momentum behind right to repair has happened, and so theoretically, it might be something that Congress is more open to, and we might see more headway with. If you're unfamiliar, right to repair is the argument that every consumer in America should have the right to repair or have repaired the devices they own, which means your iPhones or your tractors or things that are built specifically to not be user repairable. That is considered anti-consumer and is a problem. And so the argument is that, consumers should have the right to repair their own stuff. Now, this isn't an implication that you have to repair your own devices. It is the idea that you should be able to go to any repair shop that wants to service those kinds of devices and have that made. And companies like Apple and John Deere and companies like that have very much lobbied against this and made it impossible for smaller repair shops to do what they do and to really exist in the first place, due to limiting what they have access to, absurd terms for parts and things like that, including on a legal basis. And so this is, I believe, one of the first pieces of legislation for it that has actually been submitted to Congress directly. It's called the Fair Repair Act. And not only does it basically compel manufacturers to cooperate with it in the first place, but it will actually, it imposes punishments from the FTC if they don't comply in the first place, which includes payment of damages, reformation of contracts, and refund of money or property to the consumer if they can't get their device repaired. It also empowers the FTC to regulate on these kinds of things. So it's just been submitted. It remains to be seen if it'll get voted on and what that will look like. And obviously, Apple has done a crap ton of lobbying to prevent that from happening. But if you want to learn more about it, go check out Louis Rossman's YouTube channel. It's not plural, just Louis Rossman. He has basically an entire channel dedicated to teaching you to repair. Did that just say his videos aren't available? No. Okay. teaching you to repair products and also covering the overall right to repair issue. And he's been like he's taking on the big dogs to actually fight it. So I recommend go checking out him and learning more from him in that regard. Noctua has a new passive cooler, which is pretty neat. It is the NHP1. It looks like this. It kind of looks like one of the, one of their newer air coolers just kind of turned on its side so that the case airflow can passively pass through it. They also include an optional low-speed fan if you want it to just be quietly semi-passive. Obviously, this isn't going to fully cool like your Intel Extreme Editions on like overclocks or whatever, but it's very useful for silent builds that need to avoid dust to remain as quiet as possible. And I love seeing more passively cooled stuff happening. And it's not super expensive for a Noctua cooler either. It's $110, which is pretty neat. X-Men has a new, Arcade1Up has a new X-Men Cab coming out, which is pretty cool. These things are always super expensive. I think they're kind of, the $600 ones to me are just absurdly expensive for what they are. IMO, that's, it's just too much. I originally started looking into them because I thought I was seeing them for like $100 at Walmart. And I was just like, okay, that's great. That's a wonderful value. $600, that's a little much. But they do have pre-orders going up on their website. And this looks to be kind of an attempt at a faithful little cab based around the X-Men fighting game, which is pretty neat. It releases July 15th. Do we have prices? I don't think we do. So, yeah. Anyway, so we have a double whammy of graphics cards news here, which I find really amusing. Nvidia is ending driver support with the next, the R470 branch of drivers. It will be the last one to support Kepler graphics cards, which is the 600 and 700 series graphics cards, other than the 750 Ti is supposedly Maxwell instead of Kepler. So that card will still be supported if you need an older card. But on August 31st, those 700 series and older graphics cards will no longer be supported by newer drivers. That doesn't mean they just won't stop, they'll stop working. Like, you'll still be able to run those graphics cards and still play stuff, but you will no longer get new drivers or features or whatever. Granted, these are pretty old, but Nvidia has been ramping up how quickly they cut off older graphics cards. They are also cutting off support for Windows 7, 8, and 8.1 operating systems with this same driver release. So that will be the last driver that supports these older operating systems. What's weird with this release, though, is that due to the graphics card shortage, MSI is re-releasing a Kepler graphics card, the GT730, which was originally launched in 2014. It has 2 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM, not even like good DDR, but DDR3, like not GDDR, not any of that. DDR3 RAM, 2 gigs of it. Super cheap, super basic, just gets you a video output graphics card. And they are re-releasing it because the graphics market is so disastrous right now. It's currently only available in Japan, but the price for it is $42, which is doable, I guess, if you just need a video output on your Ryzen system you just built. But it's just kind of amusing, just given that Nvidia is cutting off driver support, and that's the tier that they're launching with. But, whatever. So, the largest, well, not the largest, that's not correct. A large music publisher in the music industry, the NMPA, is going after Roblox and Twitch. They have hit Roblox with a $200 million+ lawsuit alleging unauthorized song use, to which Roblox has said in a tweet or a statement that they will they will defend themselves vigorously as they work to achieve a fair resolution. Because I don't know with Roblox specifically if it's the game itself that's using music that is a problem, or rather the user-generated content, because it looks like users can upload music to it and things like that. I guess Roblox is specifically being chosen here because it is currently the top dog of this kind of user-generated thing. But I think back to like the Counter-Strike source maps and things like that, which all had crazy music on it, old Call of Duty maps. But obviously you want to go after the big dog to try to set an example. We don't know if this lawsuit will go through or if they will find a resolution, because there is supposed to be some degree of protection for user-generated content. But there is that. But they have also said that they will be ramping up enforcement to ID and remove unlicensed song usage from Twitch as well, which is part of the giant streaming DMCAs and things like that that have been hitting the platform. So, yeah, there's that as well. Next up, we have Razer releasing a new beefy USB-C charger. It is a 4-device charger, so it has 2 USB Type-C, 2 USB Type-A charging ports. It can provide 130 watts of total combined power, which is enough to charge your AirPods, your phone, your tablet, what have you. But isn't necessarily enough to power like a super big laptop or anything, which is really interesting because we just covered, I think in the last streamer news, that that the USB-C spec has been updated to support like 250 watts of power or something. So I would like to see them hopefully designing a future one that supports the full beefy power spec. But for now, if you want a easy charger that is, I guess, Razer branded, if you have a bunch of Razer devices as well to charge all of your devices, it seems like a pretty good model. So obviously a lot of people just go with the Anchor stuff or whatever, but I appreciate this one as well. So briefly, oh, you all aren't even seeing it. Here it is. I mean, it looks like the basic smart chargers that we've had forever, but 4 outputs, 130 watts is enough to charge a lot of devices. And they show it here with probably like an iPad or Surface tablet, Razer phone, their little glasses, which I don't know if people actually use, and then looks like an AirPods style case, which is pretty neat, charging individual headphones. They've got travel adapters, which I always lose because I never need them until I need them. But yeah, Roblox has experiences, no more games. All right, so before we get to the last topic or two here, I wanted to show off Windows 11. I have it installed in a virtual machine here. Obviously, I had this plan before suddenly everyone had videos on it, and it's still not running looking super great because it's just running in VirtualBox. I did not have time to set up like, Unraid or anything to run it on hardware, and this is not the correct aspect ratio, but there are some interesting notes like the rounded edges design on the start menu. None of this is present on, say, actual Windows like Explorer yet, even though they have new icons and things like that. Obviously, this isn't even a developer preview. It's not a beta. It's not something you're supposed to test, so half of the features are missing. But it gives you a general idea of what it looks like. When you first installed it, I had posted on Twitter, you get to supposedly choose your ad experience, which ends up just letting you select if you want ads for like gaming or entertainment or whatever. I think that's pretty ridiculous. But you can see the design language they're going for here, which is this rounded edge, kind of more blurred design. They do have, by default, have the start menu on the centered spot here, but you can make it left adjust somewhere. I don't have this activated, of course, because I don't have a key. But I do believe in the personalization settings, they did provide options to actually left justify the start menu, and then there is a registry key you can adjust to bring back what they call the classic start menu, which is just the Windows 10 one. But obviously most of my personalization options are kind of locked out at the moment because I don't have, it's not activated, and I didn't feel like throwing a Windows 10 key at it and seeing if it activated just for the hell of it. There are some start menu options. So yeah, the issue is that so far this alleged Windows 11 is just a skin for Windows 10. Like, there are some behind the scenes features. Like, for example, there's a new option to remember where your monitors are based on your, whenever you disconnect or reconnect a monitor or whatever. Who knows how well that works? I will test that once we have a more stable build. What I do like here, one of my favorite features, even though, as Linus noticed in his video, I can't just middle click to open a new instance of an app, which is absurd. That is absolutely insane. They will need to restore that back ASAP. I can't even right click on this. I have to right click on, it's still not giving me another window. See, that's just dumb. But a feature I wanted to show you here. Oh dear, I don't want, why is it full screen? What? Okay. Cool, give me, I don't care. Give me my, all right. So something you have is on the minimize, actually I think it's just the unmaximize button here. You get some more controls for snapping, which hopefully that means that they are improving snapping as well. But for example, you get to establish a layout. So I can say I want this to be here, I want this window here, and I want this window here. Now if I pull up another window, like the Microsoft Store, which by the way, this is not the new revamped Microsoft Store. This is the same Microsoft Store that we had in the first place. But if I go back to a window, I now have either I can hover and find just the individual window itself, or I have a group that's saved with the specific position that I just snapped all these windows to, which is not something we have in Windows 10 right now. So this is pretty sick because I can choose to either just select the individual window, for example, if I have others in this layout, or I can select this entire window group, which is really phenomenal. And yes, I'm sure that the middle click is not just due to it being in a VM. But yeah, so that's one of the things. You have some better multi-desktop support for virtual desktops, which apparently also cooperates with multi-monitors a little bit better. But overall, for the most part, it is just a Windows 10 skin, which is not to be a surprise. Like, people have already dug in and found that the kernel itself is Windows 10, which is not to be surprised given that the code name for this, which is Sun Valley, was also just the name for the 2021 H2 update for Windows 10. As far as the discussion of was this supposed to be the last version of Windows or whatever, originally apparently that quote comes from someone who supposedly just misspoke and meant that they were just working on the latest version, which is dumb because if you say the last version of something, that means the previous version, not the current version. So even that didn't make any sense, but they rolled with it and were like, yeah, this is Windows as a service. We're gonna keep Windows 10 going forever, and they worked really hard to get this whole unified kernel and shared OS across everything going. And for the most part, it's kind of worked out, but they have had some failures, like Windows 10X didn't come out in time and things like that. And so it seems like they are using Windows 11 as kind of like a rebranding point to where it's still effectively Windows 10. Granted, Windows 7 was Windows 6.1, so you have that. But it's still effectively Windows 10, but it's kind of a rebrand point to try to keep things going. I think it's kind of stupid. The naming scheme is kind of dumb, but that's what we're looking at so far. And again, this is a leaked preview that isn't even supposed to have any features yet, so it remains to be seen what the actual operating system will look like with actual features and updates. But yeah, so today's final topic, as I get one more drink here, is the webcam and the thumbnail, of course. Oh, actually, before we get to that, I wanted to mention that also, more reason to believe that they're just migrating everything over to Windows 11 is they also already announced an end-of-life date for Windows 10. So, the webcam and the thumbnail is something that appeared on Reddit, and then someone tagged me on Reddit saying that the company needed to reach out to me, and so then they emailed me. But since then, after I tweeted it out, people have kind of picked the listing apart. But this company called Thunderr is trying to develop their first product with an Indiegogo campaign for the world's first Thunderbolt 4 webcam. And as you can tell by the renders, this is just the camera bump from an iPhone 12 with supposedly USB-C Thunderbolt 4 running out of the back of it to connect to a computer. These are all just basic renders. These aren't real webcams. These aren't, like, they don't have a working product yet. They have a video here. Like, these are just fake renders that they haven't figured out. And they have mentioned to me that their current issue is just funding to get everything working. Because in these specs, by the way, they have listed that it will support 8K 24 FPS and 4K 60, which falls in line with something like a Samsung phone or whatever can record. And I asked, okay, well, 8K 24 isn't very useful for a webcam. Can you push it to 30? And they're like, yeah, sure. If we get the resources to develop it further, we could do that, which, Now, obviously, my interest here was that I thought it would be very interesting to see, because this has been basically what we've been calling for in the first place. Felipe is saying why, but the entire streaming scene in terms of wanting a webcam has wanted a webcam that does this, that takes a phone's camera bump, extracts it out, and connects it to a high-speed interface that then gives you all the full quality controls and some of the processing that phone cameras give you. And you need Thunderbolt 3/4 in order to do that, to get the uncompressed 8K or 4K video, especially at 60 FPS, to then actually interface with your computer properly. You need at least like 20 gigabits per second. You don't need 40 necessarily, But they definitely need 20. So Thunderbolt. Anyway. However, the issue is that they haven't actually designed anything. So they talk about the market need for it. Basically what we've said in my videos and streams and things like that, that we need something like this for the market. And they're trying to sell it fairly cheap, in that if you back it, supposedly you get one for $200, which is absurdly cheap. That's what the Brio originally cost, and it's terrible. The issue here being, we plan to raise at least $250,000 through crowdfunding, with all the proceeds going towards production, R&D, labor, and fulfillment costs. Designing a product without someone with a background in engineering or industrial design posed many challenges. Learning how to interact with CAD models and interfaces was the most challenging. There are some engineering tasks which still require completion. It stands to reason that they haven't done the actual engineering for this, because the actual back of it isn't even big enough. Like, that cable size is not big enough for a Thunderbolt 3 or 4 cable. That is like a 3.5 millimeter audio cable at best, like a terrible one. That cable is super thin. This is just, they literally got a CAD 3D model of a camera bump from a phone and put it on a stand here. I don't think they've actually designed the technology for it to work out this way. I think they have good intentions. I think they really want to make this happen, but I don't think they have realized what is involved in order to make this happen. And so the way that it's described is you have a 108 megapixel main sensor, you've got a telephoto sensor, and an ultra-wide sensor, as if you'd switch between them like on a phone. It's got 8K 24, 4K 60, and it's got phase detection autofocus. All of these things are great, but I don't think they've actually designed the technology here to actually build this product. I think they just know that something like this is theoretically possible, and that maybe if they just get a bunch of money, they can find someone to build it. But I really don't believe that they have figured out how to make it work. And so I think that that's going to hold them back. Yeah. It's still in the concept phase. I don't think you can fairly ask for money. Granted, they're asking for less than the Genki Shadowcast, which raised $4+ million to clone a $6 capture card and sell it for $50. So, you know, whatever. But I don't think you can fairly ask for money at this point if you don't even have a clue how the technology can work. Because the issue is that the way phone cameras work and look so good is they have computational photography happening. They are the reason you see phone camera improvements happen generationally tied to the processor improvement is the phone processor is actually super key in the way the camera works, because the phone has the specific, fixed function processes to decode the cameras and to work with the camera tech to then, like, you can't just slap a higher quality camera on an existing processor if you're already at the top tier, because you have to wait on the latest Snapdragon or Exynos or whatever. And so all of that computational photography for the exposure, for the the way that it looks on the image, for the compensation for the tiny sensor, all of that comes in the part of having the phone camera doing all of this software work, which is why if you get a weird Android camera or Android phone that has a pretty crappy camera, even though it's high spec, it's because they didn't develop the software for it on top of the hardware. But to just give yourself 3 camera sensors on a high-speed bus without the software / technology to decode it, nothing will happen. Like, if I literally just strip off the camera bump of a phone and try to rig it up to a Thunderbolt interface, nothing will happen. I do think the idea of having those different angles could be beneficial, and especially if you have 40 gigabits per second, theoretically getting, all of them to stream at the same time would be pretty cool. But given that they literally have 3 backers after 9 days, and that they're still in the concept phase, I don't think they're going to get there. Now, that is to say, I still believe that this kind of idea needs pursuing. I think someone needs to figure out how to get phone cameras to work as native cameras to Windows. And the issue is that everyone settles for the Droid Cam X, the Epoch Cam, the NDI or whatever. That doesn't look very good. I don't know how many people have actually tested it, and I'm going to fire it up here on the fly. But those of you who have actually used the phone streaming options to your computer will probably know that it doesn't look the same as it does in your phone. Now, it can still look kind of good, but the quality, if I switch over here, do I still have an NDI scene? iPad. I don't. Never mind. But regardless, if you've used those, you know that the quality doesn't look as good as you could make it look with the native phone just recording directly. And it loses some of the computational photography stuff. You lose a lot of it, on top of the fact that it's, in order to send it wirelessly over USB, you have to pre-encode it with H.264, and you get compression artifacts and latency issues and all sorts of issues. And so that's not the end-all be-all solution. It's great. It's an easy, just pop it up if you need to do a meeting, that's great. But for content creation and for high-quality video work, that's not the actual final answer. So I do think this kind of idea needs to be pursued, but it needs to be pursued with engineers who have actually figured out how to make it work first, not just a concept and asking for money. I guess that's where I'm going at. Or can we get a 1-inch sensor webcam? So actually, the, what's it called? The Insta360 1R has a 1-inch model, and they released webcam software over USB for the 1R that I believe works with the 1-inch model. So this is the camera right here. They have a 1-inch model of this action camera. Now, it's an action camera, so it's fixed focus. It's got a super wide angle field of view, and all of those issues. And I don't think it has native HDMI out, so by sticking with the USB option, you are still getting super compressed H.264 video or whatever. But that's a start. So I think if we get something more like this to then turn into a webcam, you could be pretty good. However, this camera's $550. That's too expensive for a webcam. So I don't know what the answer is. I do think we need to see some change in innovation, and it's clear that Logitech isn't doing it. Like, the StreamCam and the Brio still suffer from the same issues that all of their webcams since 2009 have faced. So I will say there are new webcams launching next month that'll be pretty cool. I don't know that they're the end-all be-all, but they are a next step that I would like to see, and I highly recommend you stay tuned for that video. But yeah. My camera disconnected for a second there. That was weird. Oh, it did it again. What is happening? Okay, that was weird. Maybe it overheated. Whatever. Something I also wanted to mention, just to wrap up this topic. I would also think the Sony RX series could do something. So, the Sony ZV-1 that I reviewed forever ago, that is a great option. And supposedly they have released an updated version of their Sony webcam software and updated firmware for that camera to have higher resolution webcam support. They haven't been able to get me another review sample to try it out, but theoretically that kind of camera that has a roughly 1-inch sensor and has the cool autofocus stuff would be the option. I just haven't gotten around, they just haven't sent me one yet. So there's that. Have you reviewed the OBS bot cameras yet? I have not. So one final note I wanted to say on this, actually two final notes, because someone asked if I used the Sony webcam software. So we did try that out on top of, well, it wasn't functional when I reviewed the Sony ZV-1 yet. And then I tried it out in a stream of Newz, and like all of the webcam software for mirrorless cameras, it uses a photo tethering preview. And so it uses a low resolution, low frame rate thing that's meant to preview your photo taking. Supposedly they have improved it specifically for the ZV-1, but not for the rest of the cameras. And overall, it doesn't really work great at all. And it was super unreliable when I tested it. But the final note I want to say is that when it comes, Chandler, I have P.O. Box in the description of most of my videos. Otherwise, shoot me an email or hit me up on Discord. But when it comes to your resources for your stream, if you have the choice between using your phone as a webcam or using it for something like Touch Portal to control your stream, I will recommend going with Touch Portal every time. Having your phone streaming videos for hours on end overheats it, drains the battery, can possibly burn in the, ruin the screen a little bit, reduces the life of your phone. compared to using it for something like Touch Portal or what have you. And so I will always recommend spending $40 on a decent webcam. If you missed it, we had an episode of the AFK chat stream where I went through a bunch of budget webcams and made them look nice and found which ones were worth it. You can get some pretty good ones for $30. I will always recommend going that route over using your phone as a webcam, because unless you're buying a secondary phone for it, in which case it won't look as good as your main phone, you're gonna burn out your phone pretty quick. But yeah, thank you so much for hanging out with me in today's streamer news. Yeah, my camera fought against me for some reason. Chandler, hit me up, Discord, email, or I got my P.O. box in the description below. We will talk, and I will see you all in the next one. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Check out our merch, EposVox.gg/merch. Check out Back and Track music, all of that. I will see you all later.